that awareness is much less acute among biologists because there's no biological equivalent of Hiroshima to sort of remind scientists in that area what kind of technology they're potentially dealing with. So we called for additional steps in the area of preparedness for biological weapons attack, and a lot of work has been done in that area, but we were persuaded that probably the single most important thing that the U.S. government can do to deter biological attack is to be prepared to respond immediately, because using biological weapons against the United States, if we're unprepared, will be much more devastating in its impact than if it is essentially a failed attack, because no one dies, because antidotes or vaccines were immediately available to treat those who were exposed. So we call for more efforts in that area. Internationally, as I said, we encourage use of the Biological Weapons Convention to promote more national measures by governments across the board, because even though we identified shortcomings in the U.S. effort, but generally speaking, the United States is light years ahead of other countries in what it's already doing to control access to dangerous pathogens and promote the culture of security. So internationalizing what we're already doing, we think is an important step, and a concrete recommendation we have in that area is to convene essentially a summit of biotechnology powers, countries where this technology exists, to try and harmonize efforts and encourage further efforts by other countries to do some of the same things that we've done here in the United States.
Fran, let me bring you into this. Two questions, I guess, drawing on what Steve has just said. Is there not a need, in your estimation, for a much more aggressive civil defense program, as we used to call them? Resiliency, I guess, is perhaps the preferred term these days, but whatever you call it, right. Is there not, in light of the sorts of threats that have been mentioned, and frankly, the probably inadequate nature of these ideas as you've laid them out, Steve, to deal with all comers, maybe some but not all, isn't it time for us to be really engaged in a much more comprehensive effort to both educate the public about the nature of the danger, equip them to deal in the way that Steve has just described, to minimize casualties and enhance national resilience, especially against the biological threat? And secondly, just on the point of the difficulty, I think that the Commission had a nice turn of phrase in the book about the danger of scientists becoming terrorists in the biological weapons area being more serious a problem than terrorists becoming scientists. What's your thinking about the adequacy or even the desirability of efforts to control the export of technologies or the flow of technological information that could, in fact, enhance the danger we face overseas from this BW?
Yeah, let me work backwards from the questions. There is a real pull in the scientific community about clearances, about background checks, about in any way interfering with the free flow of scientific data. And of course, because the collaboration in the scientific community has, done all sorts of miraculous things and in helping to find cures to disease, you do have to be very measured in the way you do that. But you look at places where you know that they've had a historical program. Let's just use Iraq as a current example. You worry in a time of war when scientists begin to disperse, where are they going? If they can't earn a living inside their country at a time of war, where are they going and who are they sharing that expertise with? And so this is a very real problem. It's a real problem from the threat perspective. It's a real problem for the intelligence community. And it's a shared problem. This is not just a US problem. By the way, our allies in Western Europe worry about it. And so this is an area where we realize from our own experience will require much greater thought. But the solution is not going to be come to by the government alone. The government is going to have to work with the academic and scientific community to help solve this issue. On your first question, on the sort of resilience and response side, The government has begun to do the sorts of things you'd want it to do. We have made massive investments in stockpile capability and deployment of stockpiles around the country. We are trying to stockpiles of antidote and vaccine and that sort of thing. As you would expect, we look for ways, what percentage of a stockpile would we make available internationally to our allies, because of course getting the antidote, the response closest to the outbreak is the key to minimizing casualties. But there's another piece, and the Commission did look at this and does acknowledge it, I think rightly, on the prevention side. We can't, because it's hard, we can't not try to stop it. The key there is going to be the intelligence and surveillance systems. That involves public health systems around the world, honestly providing information in a timely way that will allow an international response. It requires the U.S. intelligence community to have deeper and more fulsome scientific capability. It requires greater exchange across our government between the scientific community, law enforcement, and intelligence to share their expertise. The Commission, I give it a lot of credit. I think this is really important. It's really important that there be this cross-fertilization, because it's really our best hope for an indication and warning that they're either getting closer to having the capability or to deploying it, and where that might be, which will also allow, even if you can't stop it, a more timely and effective response.
Great. Are there any questions from the audience for our distinguished panelists? If so, please come to the microphone, identify yourself, and if you have it that you'd like to direct to one or the other, please say so, otherwise we'll all jump in.
No, I don't know who's best. My name is Jeff Millman. I'm with the New York Military Affairs Symposium, nymas.org. I'm wondering, though, if you're downplaying the extreme danger, it seems to me, from a dirty bomb, because it seems quite easy to me to put together probably 500 pounds of cobalt-60 medical grade and even make huge quantities of polonium-210, cobalt-60, and a dozen other short-lived radioactive weapons inside nuclear reactors all around the world, and deliver them, 20 pounds of powdered cobalt-60 exploded with 2 sticks of dynamite at the observation tower of the Empire State Building probably clears out Manhattan, not through any deaths, but through the elimination of anyone of childbearing age or less who cannot afford to live in a city where you turn any corner and there's a hotspot in a wind-blown section of the city. There's no way to clean out a city of these hotspots very quickly, and you would have to evacuate people of childbearing age.
Let's go to the answer to the question.
Do you see any protection against that kind of threat?
Steve, you chose not to focus on radiological. Can you explain why?
We chose to focus principally on biological and nuclear, meaning nuclear explosive device. We chose not to focus on the 2 other categories of weapons of mass destruction, chemical weapons and radiological weapons. Partly that was just practical limitations on our time. We only had 6 months in which to do our work. Also, I think for us a critical issue when it came to the radiological weapons was the predictably low number of casualties that would be associated with radiological weapons use. It's not to say it's not a very serious problem, and obviously we need to do more of the kinds of things we're already doing to control radiological sources to reduce the likelihood that they could be incorporated into such a weapon. It is a weapon that will scare a lot of people and have significant economic impact. I think, as you indicated in the question, not many people will die from radiological weapon attack. However, I mean, the casualties will be calculated by demographers who, slightly higher death rates from cancer over long periods of time.